Day 3 of training camp is in the books, and we're going to be recapping all the headlines. This first report is on the Miami Dolphins center position, and it comes from Michael Hernandez of Dolphins Report. Mike Pouncey made his appearance known today. The team's Pro Bowl center dressed in shoulder pads but was only out there for individual drills. Before heading into the Dolphins facility, head coach Adam Gase said that he's expected for the time being. With Mike Pouncey still being held out of practice, center Jake Bendel took reps with the first team, which was surprising considering Craig Ubrick is the projected starter in Mike Pouncey's absence. Later in practice, Ubrick returned to the starting unit. It was said Anthony Steen was also spotted in the starting lineup at center. Yes, Anthony Steen was there. I guess the main thing to take out of this report is the surprising thing is that Jake Bendel took first team reps, which is really surprising. I think all of us Dolphins fans thought that Craig Ubrick was going to be the backup to Mike Pouncey. Obviously, Anthony Steen, probably the most versatile offensive lineman on the Dolphins roster, plays backup guard and center, so that's not surprising. And obviously, the Dolphins are still being cautious with center Mike Pouncey. This next report is on Ryan Tannehill's day 3 of training camp. This report comes from Michael Hernandez of Dolphins Report. Quarterback Ryan Tannehill got the fans going on the first play with a nice slant pattern to wide receiver Devontae Parker, covered by cornerback Byron Maxwell. But the oohs and ahs soon turned to ahs as Tannehill threw a slant pattern to cornerback Xavier Howard's side of the field. Howard had tight coverage on the receiver, tipped the ball, and the linebacker Lawrence Timmons intercepted it. Timmons then returned the ball down the field and lateraled it to slot corner Bobby McCain, who took it in for the touchdown. Rebounded somewhat later on some nice throws and red zone drills. One of them was to Landry on a deep in. The other was a play-action handoff to running back Jay Ajayi with the offensive line blocking toward the left side. Tannehill faked the handoff, rolled out right, and threw to Jarvis Landry for the score. The quarterback also threw to Ajayi on a drag route towards the right side for a touchdown. Ryan Tannehill overall finished the day strongly with some nice throws in 7-on-7 drills. He hit Parker on a slant, and he hit Kenny Stills on a deep touch pass on the left sideline. But I think the main thing to take away from this is Tannehill continues to be consistently accurate in training camp. Even though he threw the 2 interceptions, one to Kiko Alonso and the other one to Xavier Howard in today's practice, he overall played really, really well. He looked really, really good, which is a good thing. And he's having fun out there. And obviously this is early on in training camp, so he's allowed his mistakes, for God's sakes. But overall, I think the thing to take away from this is Tannehill continues to look really good in training camp. Little note is Byron Maxwell said he looks a whole lot more accurate in this year's training camp than he did in last year's training camp. So it's good that Tannehill, even though he had the turnovers and the mistakes, he looks really good throwing the 2 touchdowns, hitting Kenny Stills on a deep route on the left sideline. Reportedly, he was also just destroying Byron Maxwell in practice today. So overall, Tannehill had a pretty solid day. This next report, the Miami Dolphins defensive ends continue to be dominant. This report comes from Michael Hernandez of Dolphins Report. On the defensive side, defensive ends Cameron Wake and Charles Harris both had sacks today when Tannehill was timed out and tried to roll out left. Linebacker Lawrence Timmons also said, quote, "I think we have one of the best defensive lines in football." So the main thing to take out of this report is obviously the defensive ends continue to be consistent, but we expect this from Cameron Wake. I think Charles Harris, I'm serious when I say this, I think he's going to earn the starting job. Everything we've heard about Charles Harris, we have not heard one negative thing about him. Not one negative thing about him. He has literally surprised everybody in the Dolphins building. I think he's going to surprise fans this upcoming season. He continues to be consistently dominant in practices. He was this way in spring, and he continues this into training camp. Now, also, guys, take this with a grain of salt. Charles Harris has yet to put on full-on pads just yet, so we'll see that when we see the team scrimmage. We'll see if Charles Harris continues it. But so far, Charles Harris looks like an absolute beast, and obviously we expect this from Cameron Wake. This next report is the Miami Dolphins offense inconsistent. This report comes from the Sun Sentinel. Devontae Parker went on a quick slant across the middle. Either Ryan Tannehill led him too much, Parker didn't break properly, or cornerback Xavier Howard made a good play in tipping the ball in the air. Linebacker Lawrence Timmons came down with the tip and went the other way for what became a defensive touchdown on the first day of practice. Parker caught a touchdown over Howard. This time Howard won. Maybe the fact that each side is winning is some good news. Like the report said, the Miami Dolphins offense has some ups and it has its downs. Same thing with the defense. The defense has its ups and its downs. It is something to keep your eye on, though. As a Dolphins fan, you kind of get concerned because we've seen this from the Miami Dolphins before. They have been inconsistent before. On the first day of training camp, they look like a ridiculously a top 5, top 3 offense in the NFL. Day 2, they went down a little bit. or not a little bit, just, you know, a good amount. And then on day 3, they went back up again. I think they were better than they were on day 2 for sure. I think they were definitely more productive. But I definitely think inconsistency is a strong word. I don't think the Dolphins have been inconsistent. I think, to me, when I hear inconsistent, I think we just see a totally different team from one week to the other. It's definitely not that bad at all. So inconsistent, I think, is a strong word to use here. But let me know what you guys think. Does it concern you? Doesn't it concern you? This next report, Kiko Alonso continues his strong start to training camp. This report comes from Dolphins Report. On day 2 of training camp, Kiko Alonso had an interception in red zone drills, and on day 3, he grabbed himself another one. Team went back to the 11-on-11 scrimmage in the center of the field. Tannehill threw into double coverage on the left side. The pass flew low, but was able to be picked off by Kiko Alonso. This is great news if you're a Dolphins fan. You know, linebackers have been a great negative for the Dolphins for the last 5 years, and the fact that Kiko Alonso has kicked off this offseason the way he has, grabbing 2 interceptions so far, going back to his natural position at outside linebacker, it just bodes well for the Miami Dolphins. Also, Lawrence Timmons has snagged himself an interception as well. So this is great news for Dolphins fans. Hopefully our linebackers make a drastic improvement in this upcoming season, and so far the signs point to they will. This next report is concerning cornerback Alteron Werner and cornerback Cordrea Tankersley. This report comes from Michael Hernandez of Dolphins Report. Recently signed cornerback Alteron Werner picked off second-team quarterback Matt Moore on an out pattern toward the right sideline. This play would have gone for a pick 6 in a regular game. Third-rounder Cordrea Tankersley was back at practice today, and he also had a pass deflection. It seems like he recovered from being overheated and dehydrated. This is great news that the secondary continues to impress, especially Alteron Werner, who we picked up off the street, didn't expect anything from, and he continues to be very impressive ever since he worked out for the Dolphins. And Cordrea Tankersley, obviously recovering from that, you know, the first day of training camp, he was dehydrated. Maybe that led to some of his failings in training camp so far. It looks like he's had a bounce back day as well. That has been your Miami Dolphins training camp recap for day 3. Let me know what you guys think of all these stories. I think the most positive thing to take out of it is Charles Harris continues to play like a beast. That's how consistent he's been throughout these few months now, and it's really impressive, and I can't wait to see him play in the regular season and obviously preseason. I just can't wait to see him. Obviously the scrimmage is coming up soon. It gives me even more excited. So that is going to be it, guys. I am Skags1383. Let me know what you guys think of all these stories, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Let's get through the rigmarole before we jump into the podcast. Remember, guys, this podcast posts each and every single Wednesday. The first segment of the show, we go through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. The second segment of the show, we go through all the AFC East news you need to know about. And the third and final segment, we go through the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A.